Number 11 Alabama, 3-point favorite. Number 15 LSU. Will's going to be there.
Yeah, I am.
I should have made an over under with you in mind. Dang, let's auto. Okay, 2 over unders.
Okay.
Over under 5 pregame adult beverages consumed by you.
Oh man, 5. I mean, we're getting started early. You know what I'm saying? So 5 is going to be easy. It's a night game. We'll probably not that I'll be like unprofessional or anything, but if you have a couple to start the day, you're already looking at hitting the over there on pace.
I wasn't sure if you are. I say this because I've never been to Death Valley with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you are more of a, I'm going to get my 2-3 early on, sneak a little something into the stadium, then figure it out from there. Or if it's, no, we're going to make sure that we're putting in our work pregame and not necessarily leaving it up in game and then letting results dictate how that's going to go.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I finally have a game day tradition that I love. I get my friends, we tailgate at the house. We're about like 15 minutes from Tiger Stadium, my family's house we still have down there. And so we kind of do our thing. We set up some tables and everything. We take stuff outside, set up TVs out there with the joy of Wi-Fi. And then what we do is I always get a parking pass, okay? And John is famously risk averse, so he's usually there with me. So he drives to the stadium. He barely day drinks. He's like a late riser or whatever. So he's super sober by then. And what we do is we go to the Louisiana Staple drive-through daiquiri shop, right? We all get a drive-through daiquiri, and
Love
then cool part of it is I just heard from Krista, shout out friend of the pod. She's super pregnant, she said, but she's still going to be out there fighting like a warrior for her tailgate, at her tailgate, which is right in the shadow of Death Valley.
The pictures.
It's sickest tailgate I've ever seen. So we will try to stop by there. And once I experienced that for the first time, I was like, look, I'm going to try to make this happen every time. Usually we're kind of like either one of my buddies is tailgating there, we go hang out with them, or we just walk into the stadium and just kind of pregame it. But I think, as long as they'll have me, that's going to be a fixture whenever I go to LSU games. This is my first Bama game in 10 years. So I'm really excited. Didn't miss much. Missed one of them, but I would have had to go to Tuscaloosa. And the Jaden Daniels one, that was a pleasant, happy surprise. So I think in the aggregate, I would have wasted my money if I saw another one. But yeah, I'm excited. I feel like it's 100 years in Death Valley, first year Kalen DeBoer, new page in the rivalry. So I'm excited.
All right, so over's gonna hit for you, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll take closer to 8, I guess. That probably would have been a better number. All right, over under 4 references to elimination game. Any sort of win or go home, elimination, do or die, all or nothing. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I was told that the regular season was going to be killed with the 12-team playoff. This game is only significant because of the 12-team playoff. Okay, and I get it. It's still significant. Bama hates LSU. LSU hates Bama. I mean, from a national perspective, this is a pair of 2 lost teams that would likely be on the outside looking in with the other format. I mean, this game is monumental in the new 12-team playoff era, the divisionless SEC, all those things as well. I don't think either of these teams have a path with 3 losses. I don't. And I realize Bama still got, the Georgia win, but I think Bama would have too many teams blocking them for an at-large bid. Like LSU and Tennessee, those 2 teams would still be ahead of them. Obviously, if Bama were to lose this game and you're talking about 9-3 getting in, I just don't think they would have enough of those quality wins and too many teams keeping them out. And as we saw with the first rankings, A&M is going to block LSU. And if you lose to Bama, that's potentially another blocking team at large. Bama would be for LSU. LSU could actually get double blocked because Notre Dame is blocking A&M right now, and A&M is blocking LSU right now. So that's complicated.
Disrespecters, yeah.
Yeah, big time troop disrespecters, as we talked about.
Yeah, we'll give up their seat on the bus for A&M. They're like, no, get out of here, veterans.
If someone's listening to this out of context on just the YouTube clip, they're going to be like, Notre Dame disrespects the troops? What are you guys talking about? No, just look at their schedule this year. Look at what they've done against teams that have troops as part of their identity. But you get it, all right? The losing coach of this game has a long offseason ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear about blown opportunities, how much it's going to sting that, both of these teams probably, if they lose this game, they're going to have to watch multiple rivals playing in the playoff. That's not going to be fun. That's going to be the toughest pill to have to swallow. It's one thing when it's the 4-team playoff and you got to watch Georgia in there or something like that, but it's totally different when there are several and you're not invited to the party. Not fun. Trust me. Take it from experience. Bama hasn't endured a 3-loss regular season since 2010. Saban, at that time, if you recall, he had already earned just a little bit of grace by the whole winning a national championship the year before thing. Kalen DeBoer hasn't earned that grace yet. Okay. He's earned the right to be criticized for how this year has played out, not just because of the fact that Bama's lost 2 regular season games, but how they have lost 2 very winnable games in the state of Tennessee that felt like they were there for the taking. The good news for Bama, this game isn't being played in the state of Tennessee. The bad news for Bama, this is Death Valley at night, where Brian Kelly has never lost in that setting. Can LSU continue that? Or will this group be a bit shell-shocked still after what A&M did to them down the stretch? I realize a bye game in between. That feels like a lifetime ago, by the way. It was like a very, very long time ago. I'd be stunned if the LSU defense looked like what it... Let me phrase that differently. I would be stunned if the LSU defense that we saw down the stretch against A&M looked like that against this Bama offense and the things that Kalen DeBoer would like to do. I don't expect Jalen Milroe to all of a sudden be turned into Marcel Reed. I almost kind of want to throw out what he did last year against LSU, which was impressive, but against
that though.
Say it again.
It was similar to the Marcel Reed thing. Yeah, he was super mobile. He was converting all the third downs, those legs. Yeah.
Very different offensive philosophy this year that we have seen. Also very different LSU defense and their entire philosophy that we have seen. So again, it's impressive. It's part of his career and what he's done to get to this point. But in terms of like trying to use it as a barometer to predict how this is going to go, I don't really like that. Yeah. I could picture a scenario in which Jalen Milroe puts Bama on his back and comes out on fire like he did in the Georgia game. But I don't think that's the most likely scenario. I think the most likely scenario is that by night's end, Brian Kelly, he's going full Billy Madison. Man, am I glad I called that guy, Blake Baker. That's your guy. He called Blake Baker specifically for a game like this. Can LSU dial up pressure? Can it get a lead? Can it keep a lead? I think it will. Maybe that means throwing the ball a lot down the stretch and being like, hey, look, we can't run the football. We're just going to kind of abandon that, and they're able to connect more in the passing game because they feel more comfortable with that, with the ball in Garrett Nussmeier's hands. But I'm going to say that LSU, even though I don't feel great about that element, I'm going to say LSU puts the game away late. I'm going Tigers 28-24. Will's picking Bama. He's already told me.
No. Luckily, I won't have to deal with I'll be missing the podcast on Sunday, so I can pick whoever. But yeah, I think I think LSU is going to get punched in the mouth to start this game. Based on what we know about both of these coaches, I think that we're going to see some crazy spaceship plays out of Kalen DeBoer, some orbit motion. Guys are going to be playing charades in the backfield. Linebackers are going to be caught looking.
Will receivers be shooting hoops during plays in which they're not getting the ball?
I sure hope so. Okay. It would bode well for our chances. Okay. And so that's kind of the point, though, right? I think they're going to get off to a great start and probably get up 14-0, just to be honest with you, based on what we've seen this year, given that LSU, spit a hole. We've seen LSU have like 8 yards of offense in a quarter against South Carolina. They do not start off well. We've seen this. And Alabama does. They have great game script and all that. Now, that being said, and as much as I don't trust, LSU's run game, Dellinger's hurt, so the run game is going to suffer even more. Some of the decisions by Brian Kelly have always been head-scratching. Look at that Ole Miss game, man. I mean, Tiger Stadium just willed Brian Kelly's ineptitude to a dub. And I think that these coaching staffs at this point are pretty similar, right? I think that it's kind of ironic now that I think about it in the way that Bama and Ole Miss are built. You got your boisterous defensive coordinator who is, with Pete. In Pete's case, he struggled in the past. His name's actually Pete, by the way.
Did you call Blake Baker boisterous?
No. I wasn't talking about Blake Baker. I was talking about Ole Miss. I was talking about
Pete Golding.
Yeah. I was talking about Pete Golding and Kane Womack. I'm comparing them because they're both going to Death Valley. So I think that's the part of the ball that's going to get exposed down the stretch, right? I think that Garrett Nussmeier is a good quarterback. I got to just keep telling myself that after the picks he threw against A&M that were so head-scratching. I mean, there is not a Carson Beck pick. There is not a Jackson Dart pick that is worse than any of those 3 picks that Nussmeier threw. They were horrible. I get that. That was on the road against A&M. Gets a quarterback switch, a new offense, the momentum turn. I think it's going to be the opposite here. To your point, Brian Kelly's undefeated, Death Valley at night. I think that in these big games and these big moments, DeBoer has shown to kind of outsmart himself, and I think that Blake Baker weirdly is a steadying force here. I think that Blake Baker was actually on that LSU staff coaching the linebackers that played well in 2021 against Alabama.
That was a weird game. That was such a weird game, wasn't it? Because we were like, Bryce Young is struggling mightily against a team that's rocking an interim coach O. Well, I guess interim coach O. That should have.
Yeah,
he was his own interim coach.
He was the interim for himself. Yeah. And so point being, like, exactly to your point, the things that Marcel Reed does well, Jalen Milroe can do well, and if that's the game plan, we might be in trouble. If it's running sideways, if it's the read option stuff, if it's all the motions, because Jalen Milroe is certainly a better quarterback than Reed. I don't think anybody's going to say that, right? In terms of throwing the ball, making the read, stuff like that. Maybe he trusts himself a little too much, but he is a better processor of the game of football. So when you combine those two things, that's what I've always liked about Milroe and what he did well last year in this game, albeit against the Swiss cheese defense. Now, that being said, the things that LSU's defense does well tend to benefit them against a turnover-prone quarterback and a quarterback who likes to be a statue in the pocket, which weirdly is what Jalen Milroe has become. His bad throws this year have been him not trusting his legs early, getting stuck in a bad situation where his receivers are, I guess, like playing hopscotch and they're not open, and he has to go try to make something happen, right? And so point being, I think this one is one that will come down to the big moments. Dowell Loggins is not our offensive coordinator as they were with South Carolina. That was a guy that was open at the end of that game. And so point being, I'm going to have to trust Nussmeier that he is the player that I always thought he was, and just wipe off last week like a DB, or 2 weeks ago against A&M, and just say that they've spent a lot of time prepping for this. I don't think Jalen Milroe is going to come out and be the player that he should be in this game. Like I said, what he was last year. I think that DeBoer thinks he's a little bit smarter than what they had going on last year. I think that's going to hurt him. So yeah, I got LSU in this one, and I will say too, the expanded playoff and all that does obviously heavily factor in. But Nick Saban not being the coach of Alabama is why we're here, right? Because at the end of the day, Alabama's probably undefeated under Nick Saban because he lost one game against the state of Tennessee for his whole career. So I think he still beats Georgia if Caleb DeBoer can do it. And he's not losing to Vanderbilt, I'll tell you that much. And Tennessee, good luck. I mean, how'd that go? And so point being, the openness of the SEC is just as much due to Nick Saban not being this, emperor of the SEC as much as it is the expanded playoff and the expanded SEC and all that stuff.
In Saban's 17 years, this game, the winner of this game, 14 times went on to Atlanta, won the division. My guess is that won't happen this year. It very well could, because LSU still, if LSU wins this game, would have one conference loss. But the winner of this game, all of a sudden you're looking at it going, boy, 10-2 feels really, really possible. And that's such a great reward for what these teams have done to get to this point, and shown some really tough struggles at different moments that just kind of left you scratching your head. And that is the grace of the 12-team playoff, and you can hate that, but that is kind of the reality for both of these teams. And it doesn't mean that the winner of this game is automatically going 10-2, but it does all of a sudden feel like there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, that's the playoff there. Oh, okay, that is within sights, and that could be very much up for grabs on Saturday night. Just a huge, huge game. One of the most significant games, I think, for the playoff picture so far in shaping it. This will be.
I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing, right? I mean, no matter what, the winner of this game will have a loss to either Lincoln Riley's USC, right, or Vanderbilt, right? And I'm not dumping on Vanderbilt, but Alabama, you're not supposed to lose to Vanderbilt. So either way, they're going to have a real head-scratching moment. As a Brian Kelly fan, you love the 12-team playoff for the fan part of you, because he's going to drop a stupid game early and maybe one late. He's proven to do. And
what's more embarrassing, Will? What's more embarrassing, losing to that USC team or losing to that Vanderbilt team?
I think at the time.
Well, at the time is because obviously we have different context now.
Exactly. At the time, Vandy was worse. I think now USC is definitely worse. But I will say, that both of these coaches have shown they'll drop her in game. So if you win this game, you're definitely not out of the woods for 9-3.
True. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. But it will feel significant, and I love that it will feel significant. Okay, that is really, really good news, even if you are a hater of the 12-team playoff era.